In the spring of 1221, a desperate prince named Jalal ad-Din stood in the mountain passes of Afghanistan and made a decision that should have resulted in his annihilation. Behind him lay the smoking ruins of the Khwarazmian Empire, the wealthiest civilization in Central Asia, now reduced to mass graves and pyramids of skulls by Genghis Khan's armies. Every major city from Samarkand to Bukhara had been systematically erased, their populations slaughtered down to the last child. Jalal ad-Din's father, the Shah, had fled like a coward and died on a desolate island, leaving his son to face the Mongol storm alone. Now, with barely 30,000 soldiers scraped together from the survivors, Jalal ad-Din faced a Mongol army that had never lost a major battle. But instead of fleeing like every other commander had done, instead of keeping his cavalry mobile to match Mongol speed, Jalal ad-Din ordered something insane. He commanded his horsemen to dismount, to abandon their horses, and to stand in formation as foot archers alongside his infantry. Every military principle screamed that this was suicide. To understand the absolute audacity of this decision, you must understand what the Mongols had already done to anyone who dared resist them. The Khwarazmian Empire in 1219 had been a superpower. Its cities were architectural marvels, with populations reaching hundreds of thousands. Its armies numbered in the hundreds of thousands, equipped with the finest weapons and armor that Persian craftsmanship could produce. When Genghis Khan sent a trade caravan to establish peaceful relations, the Khwarazmian governor of Otra didn't just reject the offer. He executed the Mongol ambassadors and merchants, killing roughly 150 men. The Shah Muhammad II compounded this catastrophic error by endorsing his governor's actions. Genghis Khan's response was methodical extermination. The Mongol invasion force of roughly 200,000 warriors moved with supernatural coordination, besieging multiple cities simultaneously, despite being separated by hundreds of miles of desert. Samarkand, with its 400,000 inhabitants, fell in 5 days. The Mongols executed every single inhabitant, except for 30,000 artisans they enslaved. Bukhara, the center of Islamic learning, was burned to ashes after its entire population was marched onto the steppes to die. The brutality wasn't random violence, it was calculated terror. At Nishapur, after a Mongol prince was killed during the siege, Genghis Khan ordered the complete obliteration of the city. When it fell, the Mongols spent 6 full days killing. They didn't just kill soldiers, they methodically executed every man, woman, child, and animal in the city. Contemporary sources claim 1,700,000 people died, though modern historians estimate the actual number around 200,000, which is still an almost incomprehensible massacre. The Mongols built pyramids from the severed heads, organizing them by gender. Men's skulls in one pyramid, women's in another, children's in a third. At MV, which may have been the largest city in the world, with 700,000 to 1 million inhabitants, the Mongols promised mercy if the city surrendered. When the gates opened, they spent 13 days killing every inhabitant except for 400 artisans. A woman who had escaped by hiding among corpses later walked through the ruins, counting bodies. She reached 1,300,000 before giving up. The Khwarazmian Empire, which had taken centuries to build, was erased from existence in less than 2 years. Jalal ad-Din had watched this apocalypse consume everything he knew. He was roughly 30 years old, a prince who had been trained in warfare since childhood. But nothing could prepare anyone for what the Mongols represented. His father, the Shah, had completely collapsed psychologically when the Mongols invaded. Instead of organizing resistance, Muhammad II had fled from city to city in abject terror, abandoning his people to massacre. He eventually reached a small island in the Caspian Sea, where he died of pneumonia and despair, having literally run himself to death. Jalal-ad-Din refused to follow his father's cowardly example. As the empire disintegrated, he gathered what forces he could, mostly survivors from destroyed cities, refugees who had lost everything, soldiers whose families had been murdered before their eyes. These were not professional troops. They were traumatized men driven by vengeance and the knowledge that they had absolutely nothing left to lose. Jalal-ad-Din led them toward Afghanistan, hoping the mountains might slow the Mongol advance, might give him terrain advantages that could offset the enemy's superior numbers and terrifying mobility. The Mongol force pursuing him was commanded by Shigi Kutuk, one of Genghis Khan's adopted sons, and a veteran commander who had participated in countless victories. His army numbered roughly 30,000 warriors, perfectly trained horse archers who had been fighting together for decades. Mongol warriors trained from childhood, learning to ride before they could walk, mastering the composite bow that could shoot arrows through armor at 200 yards. Each warrior maintained a string of horses, usually 4 or 5 mounts, allowing them to cover 100 meters in a single day by rotating between fresh horses. Their tactics were devastatingly effective. They would advance in loose formations, showering enemies with arrows while staying just out of weapon range, never committing to direct combat until the enemy formation broke. Then they would feign retreats, drawing pursuers into ambushes where the real Mongol army waited. Armies that tried to hold defensive positions would be surrounded and starved. Armies that tried to match Mongol mobility would be run into exhaustion and destroyed. It seemed impossible to defeat them. Every European, Chinese, and Islamic commander who had faced them had failed. But Jalal-ad-Din had observed something crucial in the pattern of Mongol victories. They always won through mobility and archery. They never engaged in prolonged, close combat if they could avoid it. Their power came from movement, from being able to shoot and maneuver simultaneously, from controlling engagement distance. So Jalal-ad-Din developed a strategy that seemed completely insane, but might be the only possible counter. When his scouts reported the Mongol army approaching through the Parwan Valley in late 1221, Jalal-ad-Din positioned his force with the mountains at his back, eliminating any possibility of retreat. Then he did something unprecedented. He ordered his cavalry to dismount. Roughly 20,000 horsemen trained their entire lives to fight from horseback, climbed down and formed up as foot archers and infantry. They stood in dense formations, shields locked, archers behind them in ranks. Only 10,000 cavalry remained mounted, positioned on the flanks. The dismounted men were essentially transformed into a human fortress, immobile but concentrated, able to maintain sustained, accurate archery fire without worrying about controlling horses. When Shigi Kutuk arrived and saw this formation, he must have been confused. Every enemy the Mongols had faced tried to match their mobility or hide behind city walls. No one had ever deliberately given up mobility. The battle began with the traditional Mongol approach. Light cavalry advanced in waves, shooting arrows in massive volleys, designed to break enemy formations through sheer psychological pressure. The composite bows they used could shoot 15 to 20 arrows per minute, meaning 30,000 Mongol archers could launch 500,000 arrows in the opening minutes of battle. The sound alone was described by survivors as like thunder, a continuous roar as arrows darkened the sky. Against cavalry, this tactic was devastating because horses panic under arrow fire, breaking formations. Against infantry in cities, the Mongols would simply exhaust the defenders, shooting for hours until resistance collapsed. But Jalal-ad-Din's dismounted cavalry were different. These were professional warriors, men who had already survived the apocalypse of the Khwarazmian conquest, who had seen entire cities murdered, who had nothing to fear anymore. They locked their shields, absorbed the arrow storm, and maintained formation. More crucially, because they were on foot and didn't need to control horses, they could shoot back with accurate, sustained fire. A mounted archer has to shoot while moving, compensating for horse movement, making long-range accuracy difficult. A foot archer stands stable, aims carefully, shoots methodically. Jalal-ad-Din's men began returning fire with disciplined volleys. For the first time in Mongol experience, their arrow tactics weren't working. The Khwarazmian formation wasn't breaking. Men were dying. Yes, arrows were finding gaps in shields, but the survivors closed ranks and kept shooting. The Mongol commander tried the standard feinade retreat tactic, pulling back cavalry units to draw the enemy into pursuit. But Jalal-ad-Din had specifically ordered his men not to move under any circumstances. The dismounted troops stayed in formation, shooting at any Mongols who came within range. This was completely outside Mongol tactical doctrine. Usually, enemies either broke and ran, making them easy to massacre, or they pursued the feinted retreat into ambushes. Jalal-ad-Din's army did neither. They simply stood there, a bristling wall of shields and arrows that wouldn't break and couldn't be baited. Hours passed in this grinding exchange. The Mongols fired until their arrows were depleted, something that rarely happened because battles usually ended long before ammunition ran out. Shigi Kutuk tried cavalry charges, sending warriors at full gallop toward the Khwarazmian lines. But the dense formation of shields and the accurate fire from stationary archers cut down horses and riders before they could make contact. As the afternoon sun blazed overhead and both armies began to exhaust themselves, Jalal-ad-Din saw his moment. The Mongols had committed fully to breaking his center, concentrating their forces in repeated charges against the immobile formation. This left their flanks exposed, stretched thin by the intensity of their assault. Jalal-ad-Din signaled his 10,000 mounted cavalry, who had been waiting on the wings throughout the entire battle. These men were fresh, their horses rested, and they had watched their dismounted comrades hold against impossible odds for hours. When they charged, they hit the Mongol flanks with devastating force. The Mongols, exhausted from hours of fighting, their arrows depleted, suddenly found themselves caught between the anvil of dismounted infantry in front and the hammer of cavalry crashing into their sides. For the first time in decades of conquest, the Mongols broke. Their formations shattered. Warriors who had never experienced defeat suddenly panicked, trying to disengage to regroup. But Jalal-ad-Din's cavalry gave them no space. The pursuit became a slaughter. Thousands of Mongol warriors, elite soldiers who had conquered empires, died running through mountain passes, cut down from behind or trampled by their own retreating comrades. The casualty figures tell the story of complete Mongol catastrophe. Modern estimates say 10,000 to 15,000 Mongol warriors were killed or scattered, a loss greater than what they suffered conquering the entire Khwarazmian Empire. Despite losing 5,000 to 8,000 men, Jalal ad-Din's daring dismounted archer tactic succeeded and broke the Mongol advantage for the first time. His victory spread across the Islamic world like wildfire, and Jalal ad-Din was hailed as the first man to defeat the Mongols in open battle. Within weeks, his army grew to nearly 70,000 men, the largest force assembled against the Mongols since the war began. But Jalal ad-Din made one fatal mistake. He defeated a Mongol army, not Genghis Khan himself. Enraged by the defeat, Genghis Khan swore to hunt Jalal ad-Din personally and erase him from existence. The Mongol main army, 50,000 elite warriors, swept across every city that supported Jalal ad-Din, destroying them with terrifying speed. Jalal ad-Din was forced into constant retreat as Genghis Khan refused to fight unless conditions favored him. At the Indus River in late 1221, Jalal ad-Din found himself trapped, with the river behind him and the full Mongol force closing in. Genghis Khan's troops encircled the entire Khwarazmian army, overwhelming both flanks with crushing numbers. Jalal ad-Din tried forming his dismounted archer wall again, but this time the Mongols avoided the center entirely. The Mongols swept around both flanks with overwhelming force, completely encircling the Khwarazmian army. The dismounted archers, immobile by design, couldn't reposition fast enough to face attacks from every direction. The formation collapsed in chaos as warriors fled toward the river in desperation. Jalal ad-Din, surrounded at the river's edge, made a desperate final decision to escape. He spurred his horse and leapt off a 40-foot cliff into the Indus River below, still wearing full armor. Against all odds, Jalal ad-Din survived the fall, swam across the raging river, and reached the far bank alive. Mongol archers fired at him continuously, but every arrow missed as he struggled through the water. When Jalal ad-Din looked back, Genghis Khan himself stood at the cliff, watching him escape. The great Khan reportedly told his sons, "A son should be like that," acknowledging Jalal ad-Din's courage even as he vowed to kill him. Genghis Khan ordered the pursuit to continue, but Jalal ad-Din disappeared into the wilderness of India. For the next 10 years, Jalal ad-Din wandered from court to court, trying to raise new armies, but never again reaching the strength he had at Parwan. In 1231, Mongol scouts finally found him, and he was killed in a minor skirmish in Kurdistan. With Jalal ad-Din's death, his revolutionary dismounted archer tactic disappeared with him. He had discovered a practical way to counter the Mongols: stable infantry, disciplined archery, and fresh cavalry reserves. But no one lived to spread his method. Later commanders facing the Mongols had to rediscover similar tactics on their own, without Jalal ad-Din's guidance. The Mamluks at Ain Jalut in 1260 used comparable principles, dismounting troops to create stable firing lines. But they developed these methods independently, unaware that Jalal ad-Din had done it decades earlier. The Battle of Parwan remains one of history's great what-ifs. What if Jalal ad-Din had survived long enough to train a generation of commanders? What if his tactics had spread before Genghis Khan could adapt? But the cruel irony is that Jalal ad-Din's greatest victory sealed his fate. By defeating the Mongols, he guaranteed that Genghis Khan would hunt him without mercy. If he had fled into exile, he might have lived peacefully as an honored refugee prince. Instead, he chose to resist, and that decision ensured Genghis Khan would never stop pursuing him. The victory at Parwan made Jalal ad-Din a symbol of hope, and a threat Genghis Khan could never ignore. The Mongol Empire depended on the fear of invincibility, and Jalal ad-Din shattered that illusion. If one man could defeat them, others might find the courage to resist. Genghis Khan understood this danger better than anyone. He would not allow Jalal ad-Din's victory to survive in memory. Every city that supported Jalal ad-Din was destroyed so thoroughly that no trace of rebellion remained. Every tribe that sent him warriors was hunted down and wiped from the map. Genghis Khan's revenge was absolute, and it reshaped the entire region. History remembered Jalal ad-Din not for his brilliant victory, but for his desperate flight and eventual death. The 30,000-foot archers who once stopped the unstoppable Mongols faded into a forgotten footnote of time. Their triumph at Parwan was erased by the unstoppable force of Mongol vengeance. Genghis Khan made sure the world remembered only the price of defiance, not the possibility of victory. Jalal ad-Din had proven the Mongols were not invincible, but proving it sealed his fate. His courage inspired thousands, yet it condemned him to be hunted until the end. And so the man who defeated the Mongols became a wandering legend, admired, feared, and ultimately forgotten. In the end, Jalal ad-Din's victory at Parwan stood not as a turning point in history, but as a brief, brilliant reminder that even the greatest empires can be challenged.